They had perfected war long before humans learned to count stars. From the high dais of the command amphitheater, the council admirals watched the projection settle. One vessel, human, mass-heavy, asymmetric, visibly layered like an artifact dug from an unrefined era. No escort, no screen, no attempt to mask emissions. The chamber filled with the soft, amused clicks of translated laughter. A single battleship drifting at the edge of council-controlled volume, 42,000 kilometers inside. The enforcement line. The navigational glyph blinked red, as if embarrassed by the simplicity of the contact. "Primitive construction," murmured the Thalrex admiral, frills flexing with disdain. "Chemical propellant signatures. Exposed armor seams." Another voice joined in, older, colder. They still believe mass equals safety. The fleet array behind them numbered 10,000 vessels across 6 species, layered in perfect geometry. Energy lances charged in disciplined silence. Targeting solutions converged in 0.8 seconds. This was not battle. This was administration. The humans transmitted once. A narrowband signal. No flourish, no deference. The translation lagged half a second before resolving. Unrecognized jurisdiction. "We do not consent. Do not advance." The chamber rippled with irritation. Consent was a concept applied after compliance, not before. The council had enforced peace across 3 spiral arms by removing those who resisted it. Resistance was educational. Survivors learned. Others were processed. "Record the exchange," the presiding admiral said. "Archive it for compliance training." Range closed by another 3,000 kilometers as the human ship maintained course, engines idling at a fraction of output. No evasive posture, no weapons ports opening. The audacity registered as error. "They think themselves equal," someone said. "No," replied the presiding admiral. "They think themselves unnoticed." Authorization glyphs appeared. The vote was ceremonial. Processing protocols unlocked in sequence: disable propulsion, breach compartments, secure biologicals. Estimated duration, 6 minutes. Civilian casualty tolerance, irrelevant. Begin enforcement. Energy arrays flared across the formation, 10,000 vectors aligning on a single hull. Power levels rose to standard suppression output, calibrated for compliance, not destruction. This was important. The council did not slaughter without cause. Order required restraint. The first volley launched. In the instant before impact, the human ship's emissions shifted, barely. A statistical anomaly. Heat sinks rotated, fields layered, mass distributions adjusted by fractions of a percent. Impact. "In 3, an aide announced. 2. A quiet line appeared on the presiding admiral's display. Predicted damage, negligible. That was impossible. They had mastered war. This would take 6 minutes. They were generous with time. The line was not drawn on any map. It existed in attitude, in mass held steady against pressure. The human battleship stopped accelerating and did not drift. Velocity dropped to 0 relative to the council's enforcement grid, exactly 39,000 kilometers from the nearest formation edge. Close enough to be counted, far enough to matter. Council. Hail frequencies opened automatically, layered in 6 languages and 12 diplomatic tones. The presiding admiral's voice carried first, smooth and absolute. "You are in violation of council space. Power down. Prepare for processing. Compliance window, 90 seconds. The timer appeared on every display, counting down from 1:30 in clean blue numerals. Around it, 10,000 ships adjusted posture. Lances tracked. Gravity wells idled at ready mass. This was the moment when most species broke. Voices rising, engines flaring, pleas fracturing into panic. The human ship did none of it. For 14 seconds, there was no reply. Internal council analysts marked the delay as fear response, stress lag, cognitive overload. They annotated it for later review. Then a single transmission returned, narrowband again, riding a carrier wave so unadorned it felt deliberate. "This vessel is sovereign. We are not surrendering. No honorifics, no appeals, no qualifiers." The chamber stiffened. The presiding admiral leaned forward. "Clarify. This is your final opportunity to avoid force." The reply came in 0.2 seconds. as if prepared long before the demand existed. We will not power down. We will not be boarded. Do not advance. A pause followed, not from the human ship, from the Council. The countdown reached 102. Sensors showed the human battleship's reactors steady at 32% output. Weapons remained cold. External armor shutters stayed locked. No feints, no deception spikes, just mass, held in place by disciplined thrust control. They don't understand the process, someone said. They understand, another answered. They are refusing it. The presiding admiral signaled a secondary channel. You are outmatched by a factor of 10,000 to 1. This is not a negotiation. The response arrived slower this time. 1.1 seconds, long enough to be intentional. Then, we will make this simple. The human feed expanded, adding telemetry overlays without being asked. Distance markers, relative vectors, timestamps synchronized to council clocks. We are holding position at 39,000 kilometers. We will not cross your formation. You will not cross this line. A thin red vector appeared on every shared display, projected outward from the human ship's bow. It was not a weapon lock, it was geometry. Cross it, and we will respond. The timer hit 0:30. This was the moment the Council usually enjoyed, the visible compression of inevitability. Instead, irritation spread. The human ship had inverted the ritual. They were not pleading for mercy, they were issuing boundaries. You threaten the Council? The presiding admiral asked. The answer came without delay. No, we are informing. U-Bot standalone line, cold final. We will not fire first. Another pause. The fleet held. 10,000 ships waited on one hull. The countdown reached 0. The Council did not fire yet. Neither did the humans. The line remained where it was. They fired because the math said they could not lose. The Council did not announce escalation. They simply transitioned from restraint to certainty. Across 10,000 hulls, energy arrays rose from standby to suppression output, synchronized to a single tick of the enforcement clock. Power levels locked at 62%, enough to cripple, not annihilate. Order mattered. The human battleship did not move. At 39,000 kilometers, the first wave crossed the line. Lances of coherent energy-stitched space, precise and elegant. The strike geometry was flawless. Overlapping vectors, phased frequencies, redundant, harmonics designed to overwhelm any known defensive field within 0.4 seconds. Analysts watched efficiency projections scroll with practiced boredom. Impact registered, and then it did not resolve. On the primary display, the expected bloom failed to appear. No hull breach, no thermal flare. Instead, the contact zone dimmed, as if the light itself had been swallowed. Confirm hit, the presiding admiral said. Sensors rechecked, telemetry refreshed. The numbers updated, energy transfer, 18%. That was the first anomaly. The second wave followed immediately, adjusted frequencies cycling through 3 countershield profiles. Output increased to 71%. This time, the chamber leaned forward. Impact again. The human ship's silhouette shimmered, armor plates glowing dull red before cooling in bands that rotated inward like tides. Energy transfer, 12%. A murmur rippled through the amphitheater. Reroute through gravitic shear, someone ordered. They're dispersing, third wave. Different spectrum, different math. This one was meant to tear mass apart at the molecular boundary. The human ship's emissions spiked by 4%. Heat sinks opened. Something beneath the armor shifted, slow, heavy, deliberate. Energy transfer 6%. Silence followed, broken only by alert tones cascading in the wrong direction. They're not deflecting, an analyst said, voice tight. They're absorbing. Impossible. Absorption caps were universal constants. No hull could take that load without catastrophic buildup. Yet the human battleship's internal temperature stabilized at 412 Kelvin, then dropped. A standalone line cut across the display, auto-generated by the Council's own systems. Projected kill probability, declining. The presiding admiral straightened. Increase output, full suppression. Arrays surged to 90%. This time the strike was continuous. A sustained beam meant to cook through anything given enough seconds. The human ship vanished inside the glare. 5 seconds passed. 10. 15. The beam attenuated, not from loss of focus, but loss of effect. The light bent, bleeding sideways into invisible layers around the hull. Space around the ship distorted, as if mass itself had thickened. Energy transfer. 3%. Someone laughed once. It cut off quickly. They're using mass as a sink. Another analyst whispered. Layered, rotational, they're turning energy into heat, the presiding admiral finished, and dumping it. The human ship transmitted without being hailed, your weapons are inefficient. The words were not taunting, they were diagnostic. We recommend you cease fire. A new overlay appeared, uninvited, synced again to council time. Average energy loss per second, 82%. Structural damage sustained, negligible. Another standalone line followed, colder than the first. This will not end the way you think. The council fired again anyway. Pride demanded it. This time, the human ship responded, not with weapons, but with motion. Thrusters adjusted by fractions, mass shifted, the absorption curve flattened further. Energy transfer, 1.9%. The chamber finally understood the reversal. They had brought light to a war built of weight. The presiding admiral raised a hand to halt the barrage. Outside, in the black, the human battleship still held position at 39,000 kilometers. Inside, the council's mastery of war began to evaporate, 1 percentage point at a time. The guns fell, silent. The humans did not advance. They did not need to. They moved after proving they did not have to. The human battleship broke its hold with a single precise burn. Not an escape vector, not an attack run, a lateral translation across the council's enforcement grid. Acceleration ramping from 0 to 0.12 C in under 3 seconds. No warning spike, no engine bloom, just mass deciding to be elsewhere. Council formation logic faltered immediately. Their fleets were built for symmetry, nested arcs, overlapping fields, shared targeting horizons calculated on predictable thrust. Limits. The human ship ignored those limits. It did not outrun the grid. It stepped through the assumptions underneath it. Distance collapsed. 1,000 kilometers became 22,000. Then 14,500. Track the vector, the presiding admiral snapped. The answer came late. By the time targeting solutions recalculated, the human ship had already changed direction, acceleration spiking again, this time inward. The maneuver was impossible by council standards. No known hull could survive the sheer forces implied. By the curve, the human battleship did. Acceleration peaked at 31,000 gravities for 0.8 seconds. Internal dampers absorbed what should have pulped any crew. The ship's path bent around the edge of the formation, not piercing it, but unzipping it. One standalone line flashed across multiple displays. They're inside the timing window. Council. Ships began to adjust, but adjustment required consensus. Consensus required time. Human motion required neither. The battleship slid between two flotillas separated by 6,000 kilometers, close enough that their own overlapping fire control grids interfered with each other. Safety interlocks tripped. Lances went cold to avoid friendly fire. The human ship accelerated again. Vectors changed faster than the council could vote. The battleship's path was not random. It was surgical. Each burn calibrated to arrive precisely between predictive updates, exploiting the 0.3-second lag baked into multi-species coordination protocols. Reform on Axis 7, someone ordered. Too late. Axis 7 no longer existed. The human ship's wake distorted local space just enough to degrade sensor. Coherence. Ghost contacts bloomed. Ranges lied. Relative velocities misreported by margins that would have been trivial in any other fight. Here, they were lethal. Another standalone line appeared, this time from a panicked analyst. Our formation is unraveling. Fenicoam. Council fleets began to drift apart, not from damage, but from loss of trust in their own data. Ships pulled back to avoid collisions that were not there. Others surged forward to compensate. Gaps opened, measured, exploitable. The human battleship cut through one of them, passing within 200 kilometers of a command cruiser without firing. Hull plates slid, point defenses tracked empty space. The message that followed was short. We are closing the distance, no threat, no countdown, just fact. Acceleration spiked again, lower this time, only 0.08 C, but sustained. The human ship was no longer a distant anomaly. It was a presence, large and undeniable, forcing the Council to react instead of decide. Their greatest advantage, numbers, had become inertia. 1,000 ships, no longer one fleet, but many hesitant pieces. The human battleship slowed at the heart of the disruption, engines settling at 27%. It did not pursue the fleeing edges. It held position inside the broken geometry it had created. The Council finally understood the maneuver. This was not a charge, it was placement. From here, every shot would count, and the humans were done wasting time. They chose targets before they chose weapons. Inside the broken geometry of the Council fleet, the human battleship's fire control arrays unfolded with quiet precision. Command signatures lit the tactical map, 12 primary nodes, 37 secondary relays, all identified by traffic density and authority weight rather than hull size. Leadership left patterns, humans counted them. The Council realized the shift too late. Priority threat designation, someone began. The first railgun fired. There was no flash, no theatrical charge, just a mass driver pulse that crossed 18,000 kilometers in 0.06 seconds. The projectile struck the nearest command cruiser amidships and exited out the far side before the hull alarms could finish initializing. The cruiser split into 3 measurable pieces. Time to loss of command signal, 0.4 seconds. A second railgun followed, then a third. Each shot separated by exactly 2.1 seconds. Not rate limited by heat, rate limited by decision. One standalone line appeared on multiple displays. Count the intervals. Missile bays opened next, not in salvos but packets. 6 missiles per packet. Launched every 5 seconds, each on a different vector. They did not aim for hulls, they aimed for space, intersections where evasion would force targets into worse choices. Council point defenses engaged, brilliant and useless. Missiles corrected mid-flight, burning hard for half a second, then coasting cold. 2 command ships attempted emergency jumps. Both failed when their nav arrays vanished in synchronized detonations. Command node count dropped from 12 to 9. The Council fired back, scattered now, desperate beams lancing through empty corridors where the human ship had been moments earlier. The battleship did not evade so much as refuse to be where predicted. Railgun 4, Railgun 5. Another cruiser lost cohesion, its internal gravity failing asymmetrically. Crew survival estimates flickered, then vanished as the ship folded. Command. Node count, 7. They're executing, someone whispered. No, execution implied anger. This was calculation. The human ship transmitted once, briefly. Surrender corridors remain open. The message was almost lost under the next sequence. Limited nuclear options came last. 2 warheads only, each equivalent to 1.2 megatons. Small by stellar standards, chosen for effect rather than spectacle. They detonated inside overlapping defensive bubbles where 3 command ships had clustered for mutual protection. The light was contained. The pressure was not. When it cleared, there were no ships in that volume. Command node count, 4. Another. Standalone line appeared, cold and unmistakable. This is arithmetic. The Council's remaining leaders attempted to scatter, authority bleeding outward into lesser hulls. It did not help. Humans had already mapped succession weights. Railguns, 6 through 9, fired in a rolling cadence. Impacts timed to arrive within the same 0.2-second window. 3 more command ships disappeared, one after another, their loss marked by silence, where coordination signals should have been. Command node count, 1. The last was the presiding admiral's flagship. It tried to flee, drives spiking past safety margins. The human battleship adjusted course by 3 degrees and fired once more. Railgun 10. The projectile clipped the flagship's engine cluster, not destroying it, but crippling thrust symmetry. The ship spun, power bleeding away. Secondary explosions rippled as systems failed out of order. The humans did not finish it. Weapons went cold, missile bays sealed, railgun capacitors powered down. The battleship held position amid drifting wreckage and stunned survivors. A final transmission crossed all open channels. Cease fire acknowledged. We will not pursue. Casualty estimates stabilized. Of 10,000 Council vessels, 312 were destroyed, 418 disabled. Human losses, 0. The surrender corridors filled with traffic. The first killshot set piece ended not with annihilation, but with control restored to those who had earned it. The Council's mastery of war lay in pieces, counted carefully, floating, in the dark. The humans waited for what came next. The guns stayed silent because the humans told them to. In the wreckage field, motion slowed to drift. Wounded ships vented atmosphere in controlled plumes. Escape pods clustered along the marked corridors, exactly where the human battleship's transmission beacons had said they would be safe. No shots followed them. No locks tracked their heat. For 94 seconds, nothing happened. Then the broadcast began. It did not come from a command frequency or a psychological warfare band. It rode every open channel at once, stripped of flourish, synchronized to Council time. The signal strength was calibrated to be unmistakable, but not overpowering. This is a lawful engagement. The voice was human, calm, unraised, not amplified for dominance. Hostilities are suspended. Surrender corridors remain open for 12 hours. Medical aid will be provided immediately upon compliance. Across the Council fleet, stunned crews listened. Some waited for the trick. Others waited for the condition hidden behind the words. It did not come. The transmission continued, measured and precise. We do not destroy surrendered vessels. We do not kill prisoners. We do not process populations. A pause, long enough to register. Forced. Labor, biological harvesting, and ownership of sentient beings are crimes under human law. The phrase rippled through the fleet like a pressure change. Council doctrine did not frame those practices as crimes. They framed them as necessities, administrative tools, order. The human voice did not argue the point. Individuals responsible for such actions will be detained and tried. Trials will be public. Evidence will be recorded. Sentences will be served. Another pause. Civilian crews are not targets. Medical priority is granted regardless of species. Compliance will not be punished. One standalone line appeared on countless displays, stripped of commentary. The law still applies. Council analysts scrambled, searching for precedent. There was none. Victors dictated outcomes. They erased enemies. They rewrote history. They did not stop to explain themselves. The humans had stopped everything to explain exactly that. Surrender traffic increased. First a trickle, then steady flow. Escape pods altered course toward the beacons. Disabled ships powered down weapons without being asked twice. Of the 418 crippled vessels, 287 signaled compliance within the first 18 minutes. The human battleship adjusted position slightly, engines humming at 24%, maintaining a central, non-threatening posture. Its weapons remained cold. A secondary transmission followed, narrower, directed at command-level survivors. You will be detained, you will be treated, you will have counsel, you will answer for what you ordered. No anger, no promise of revenge, just process. Another standalone line followed, colder than the last. Mercy is not negotiation. The Council's remaining leadership understood the shift too late. The humans were not pausing because they were unsure. They were pausing because the objective had been met. Dominance established, risk contained. Law invoked. Medical drones deployed from the human ship in counted waves, 60 units per hour, moving first toward non-human life signs, then backtracking to stabilize mixed crews. Translation packets accompanied them, explaining procedures before. Contact was made. Some council officers wept, others stared in silence, trying to reconcile survival with defeat. The human battleship did not watch them. It watched the wider sensor horizon, already measuring what this pause would cost. and what it would prevent. Escalation had stopped not because it could not continue, but because it no longer needed to, and the galaxy was listening. The observers had been silent until silence became impossible. Beyond the shattered council formation, at ranges measured in light minutes, neutral platforms and coalition survey ships held their distance. They had recorded everything, the mockery, the reversal, the arithmetic, the pause. Now they compared notes, and the picture that formed unsettled them more than the battle itself. This had not been improvisation. Coalition analysts overlaid historical data with what they had just witnessed. The human battleship's maneuvers, the matched patterns buried in old encounter logs, skirmishes against pirate swarms, border wars fought without witnesses, training exercises conducted far from trade lanes. Variations existed, the structure did not. They didn't adapt. One observer said quietly. They executed. Sensor specialists replayed the acceleration curves, the vector timing. The way the ship moved between coordination updates instead of overpowering them. Those windows, 0.3 seconds wide, had been known for centuries. The Council had simply never faced an enemy disciplined enough to exploit them. A coalition military attaché pulled archived footage. Human ground forces on high-gravity worlds, moving under loads that would have crushed most species. Naval drills conducted inside asteroid fields with live mass drivers. Simulations run until crews failed, then run again. The pattern sharpened. Humans, trained where error meant death long before space ever tried to kill them. Death-world-born crews conditioned to treat catastrophe as baseline. Their ships reflected it, layered mass, redundant systems, damage absorption over elegance. Not faster than anyone else in a straight line, just harder to stop and harder to surprise. One standalone line appeared in an observer's shared feed. This is doctrine, not bravado. Coalition legal scholars joined the analysis. The broadcast during the pause matched pre-existing human treaties. Anti-slavery clauses written generations ago, trial frameworks tested in interplanetary courts, surrender protocols drilled until they were reflex. Even the wording was consistent. They've been waiting for this, someone said. Not waiting for the Council specifically. Waiting for anyone who mistook restraint for weakness. A xenohistorian flagged something else. The human ship systems bore markers of long-range isolation, materials adapted to unknown radiation spectra, hull stress tolerances beyond mapped space. Signs of travel far outside coalition charts. Where did they learn to absorb energy like that? The historian asked. The answer was uncomfortable. Not here. The coalition feeds filled with quiet acknowledgements. No panic, no outrage, just recalculation. Alliances shifted not because of fear, but because the humans had demonstrated something rare. They planned for wars they hoped not to fight. Another standalone line circulated, unspoken but understood. Preparation is a moral choice. As surrender traffic continued, coalition envoys began drafting messages, offers of mediation, recognition, cautious partnership. None of them questioned the humans' right to act. That debate had ended with the first railgun shot. The human battleship remained where it was, steady amid the debris, medical drones still cycling. To the observers, the most unsettling detail was not the power on display. It was how familiar it all seemed to the humans themselves, as if this moment had been rehearsed, argued over, and settled centuries ago. And somewhere beyond the sensor horizon, something else was taking notes. The second phase began without ceremony. The human battleship did not announce escalation. It simply transmitted updated coordinates, clean, unambiguous, and watched who obeyed them. Of the remaining Council vessels, 6,941 adjusted course within the first 2 minutes. The rest hesitated, clustered around damaged command nodes or drifting in broken formations that no longer trusted their own sensors. Humans counted the hesitation. Strike packages detached from the battleship's flanks, modular craft, dense and angular, each carrying boarding teams and precision munitions. 48 units launched in the first wave, fanning out at controlled acceleration, never exceeding what Council tracking could follow. They wanted to be seen. This is containment, not pursuit. The words appeared briefly on shared channels, then vanished. Coordinated strikes followed, not to destroy, but to isolate. Railguns fired again, this time at lower yield, punching holes, through drive assemblies and power spines with surgical restraint. Each impact was timed to land within a 0.5-second window across multiple targets, overwhelming damage control coordination without collapsing hulls. Disabled ships counted upward. 12. Then 900 missiles flew next, but not toward ships. They detonated in space, laying out luminous grids, virtual fences marking no-fire zones and surrender corridors. Any vessel crossing into them without hostile action found itself ignored. Any vessel firing out of them did not. One standalone. Line cut across coalition feeds. Numbers favor those who can wait. Boarding actions commenced at minute 12. Human teams moved methodically, cutting entry points with thermal tools calibrated to avoid decompression. No shock charges, no atmospheric venting. They advanced in squads of 8, weapons visible but lowered, translations running ahead of them. You are secured. Do not resist. Medical assistance follows. Resistance was rare. When it occurred, it ended quickly. Non-lethal rounds, stasis restraints, chemical sedatives tuned to alien biologies. Casualty ratios were tracked in real time. Boarding actions completed without fatalities, 93%. The remaining Council ships watched this unfold and recalculated their odds. Cascading surrenders followed, each triggering another set of coordinates, another safe corridor. Authority dissolved not with an explosion but with paperwork, compliance codes flashing green across formerly hostile hulls. At minute 27, a holdout group attempted a breakout, 312 ships accelerating in a desperate wedge toward open space. The human battleship adjusted position by 4,000 kilometers and fired 3 railgun rounds, not at the ships, at the space in front of them. The kinetic barriers bloomed into existence just long enough to force course corrections. Ships veered. Formation. Coherence shattered. 2 collided. The rest scattered directly into pre-marked containment zones. Breakout attempt duration, 41 seconds. Another standalone line followed, almost gentle. You are surrounded by your own math. By the half-hour mark, the battle map no longer resembled a war. It looked like an audit. Green compliance icons outnumbered red hostiles 5-1. The human battleship's reactors idled at 29%. Weapons cycled between warm and cold, never staying hot long enough to suggest strain. Medical traffic increased. Evac pods numbered in the thousands now, each tagged, tracked, and assigned destination ships. Human crews worked alongside surrendered Council medics without incident, sharing supplies, translating procedures, correcting errors without comment. One Council officer, detained aboard a human craft, asked a question through a shaking translator. Why? Not finish it? The human response was immediate, because the objective is control, not erasure. At minute 46, the last organized resistance ended. A single cruiser powered down weapons and broadcast unconditional compliance. The signal was relayed across the fleet, automatically recognized as binding under Council. Lorder hostile status dropped to 0. Final counts stabilized, Council vessels destroyed, 412. Council vessels disabled, 1,287. Council vessels surrendered, 8,301. Human casualties, none. The numbers spread faster than the wreckage ever had. Coalition. Observers updated their models and quietly discarded them. The humans had not won by overwhelming force, though they possessed it. They had won by sequencing, by knowing exactly how much pressure to apply and when to stop. The human battleship rotated slowly, presenting no weapons to anyone. Boarding teams completed their last checks and withdrew. Containment grids dimmed but did not vanish. The set piece ended the way the first had not, with thousands of ships, still intact, crews alive, futures undecided. Dominance had been established again, not louder than before, but wider. The humans did not celebrate. They logged results, adjusted patrol arcs, and waited for the political consequences to arrive. Numbers had done their work. The rest would follow. Acceptance did not arrive as a declaration. It arrived as traffic. Across the surrender corridors, ships powered down in orderly sequence, broadcasting compliance codes that rippled outward from hull to hull. What had once been a fleet became a queue. Engines idled, weapons sealed, life support, signatures steadied as fear gave way to procedure. The human battleship repositioned again, not to dominate space, but to anchor it. Medical tenders rotated through the corridors in timed loops. Detainees were logged, not herded. Names were recorded alongside ranks and roles. No one vanished into silence. Prisoners were treated first. Council officers expected restraint cells, sensory deprivation, extraction. They received diagnostics, wound care, translators calibrated to reduce panic. Restraints were applied only when needed, removed as soon as they were not. Even the presiding admiral, now a detainee, was stabilized before questioning began. "You will be tried," the human legal officer said, flat and precise. "Not punished without process." The admiral searched for deception and found none. News moved faster than ships ever could. Border systems watching the engagement began to transmit inquiries, then statements. Requests for clarification turned into declarations of intent. Worlds that had paid tribute to the Council for generations saw for the first time a different outcome for defiance, a lawful one. Defections followed quietly at first. Trade hubs suspended Council enforcement access. Patrol stations powered down automated tithing systems. 3 minor systems declared immediate withdrawal, citing human legal recognition of sentient rights. Within 6 hours, that number rose to 12. The Council's authority had not been shattered by firepower, it was being hollowed out by comparison. Human envoys did not press the advantage. They responded to each declaration with the same packet. Recognition of autonomy, legal framework summaries, conditions for mutual defense that did not include ownership or forced labor. Choice was the lever. Coalition observers noted the pattern with unease. Empires conquered by fear rarely collapsed this way. This was erosion. Trust draining from old structures towards something that had proven itself under pressure. Inside the detention rings, interrogations began. Not interrogations, as the Council understood them. No coercion, no degradation. Just timelines, orders given. Chains of command mapped in clean, unbroken lines. Responsibility was isolated. Another standalone line circulated among the detainees, translated without emphasis. "You will answer only for what you chose." Some officers broke down, others straightened, relieved to finally understand the shape of their fate. By the end of the first cycle, over 20 million civilians across former council space had been flagged for evacuation from bonded labor facilities. Human logistics planners adjusted schedules without comment, reallocating transports, requesting coalition assistance without demanding it. Help arrived anyway. The political shift became undeniable when a council-aligned world transmitted a single sentence on an open channel. "We recognize human jurisdiction in this matter. It was not surrender. It was alignment." The human battleship logged the message, acknowledged receipt, and forwarded legal guidance. No celebratory broadcast followed. No demand for loyalty. Power, once demonstrated, no longer needed to be asserted. As the wreckage fields were cleared and the surrender corridors thinned, the battle receded into administration. Forms replaced firing solutions. Courts replaced kill lists. The galaxy adjusted its posture accordingly. The humans had not seized territory. They had offered an order that worked. And for the first time, it was being accepted. The battlefield cooled into silence. Debris fields were mapped and cleared. Medical traffic tapered. Detention schedules finalized. The human battleship reduced its profile, reactors easing down to long-duration output as patrol arcs widened and then stabilized. What had been war became aftermath with methodical speed. That was when the sensors spoke again. It began as background noise, anomalous drift at the edge of the array, far beyond the Council's former perimeter. a signal repetition so faint it initially registered as residual interference from the engagement itself. Analysts flagged it, logged it, and almost dismissed it. Almost. The pattern repeated every 11.4 seconds, the same spacing that had appeared during the energy absorption phase. The same spectral shear that bent council beams sideways instead of breaking them. Identical down to 3 decimal places. A technician reran the comparison twice before elevating it. Correlation confirmed, she said. This matches the anomaly signature recorded during combat. Range estimate populated slowly, numbers resolving with uncomfortable scale. Outer rim, deep, unmapped, distance, thousands of light years, and closing. The human battleship adjusted, orientation by a fraction, sensors narrowing, reaching. No alarms sounded, no weapons spun up. But attention shifted, unmistakably. A secondary analysis came in from long-range astrophysics. This isn't passive radiation, the analyst said. It's engineered, directed, old, older than the Council's oldest archives, older than their wars, older than their assumptions about what space contained. The signature pulsed again. Another comparison ran, this time against classified human data sets not shared with the Coalition. The match tightened further. Hull stress adaptations, heat dissipation tolerances, mass layer rotation models. The human ship had not learned those tricks here, it had learned them somewhere else. A brief internal transmission circulated among senior officers. No urgency, no fear, same signal, same math. Confirmed. The battleship logged the contact, assigned a designation, and passed the information upstream. Patrol doctrines updated quietly. Exploration flags changed color. Long-range assets were retasked without announcement. Behind them, Council space settled into a new order, courts convening, evacuations underway, laws enforced where none had existed before. Ahead of them, something vast and methodical was moving inward, unaware it had been noticed. The humans did not speculate aloud. They did not celebrate survival or sharpen speeches for the Coalition. They did what they had always done when the universe revealed a harder edge than expected. They prepared. Far beyond the wreckage and the politics, the signal pulsed again, steady and patient. This time, it was not unanswered.